Okay, thanks everyone for joining. First of all, thanks to the organisers for inviting me to talk about the topic of how to unlock significant value for B2B corporate subscribers. My name's Ian Hart. I've spent 20 years in editorial, product and management roles within B2B subscriptions industry. And that journey has taken me from what some might call the traditional publishing industry towards the business that is centered around information produced by experts, analytics, workflow tools and softwares. And that's a journey I think that many publishers seek to make and should be making. That's because in that time I've seen a substantive increase in average order values of the information provided, and that is in particular with the largest clients within our organisation. So it's a simple premise really. It's about ensuring that your clients unlock significant value from the news, data, experts and technology, so that in order that they will actually be able to pay you higher amounts for subscription products. But it's not such a simple answer. It might be hard or time-consuming to determine the true value that a customer gives to the products that you're already offering or proposing to offer. And we'll cover a little bit on that in a minute. Also, customers and prospects might be anchored in how they think about your proposition or your brand. Does this organisation really do that? And frankly, you might be a bit anchored in your own thinking as well. And then the third part here is developing high-value products may require capabilities and skill sets that you don't currently have within your organisation. So when thinking about how to approach this presentation, I thought, well, what did I do when we started trying to make the journey up the value chain? And actually the first thing we did was to take a step back. Because if we were going to really understand where the highest value to our customers then we really needed to know where to target. And I've broken that down into 4 areas here. Firstly, it's about understanding which are the large and growth markets that you are currently serving or that you could serve. And I think could serve is more important there as you think about actually can we take our expertise, our information and twist it into a sector that may have a greater willingness to pay or we might not have sold to this area before. And then taking those and looking at what's the relative size of those and what is the growth in these potential markets. And I'm going to give you some examples. I'm a specialist in agribusiness and food information. I'm going to give you some examples of those in the next slide. But before we do that, I'll just look at the next part, which is the high potential customers. Now, when I was first looking at where we should expand a few years back, I sort of took a broad approach and was asking almost anybody under the sun. Now, if you're at a very early part of your journey, that might be appropriate. But if you've already built up a base in an industry, you may well know who your top tier clients or your highest potential clients are. And if you're wanting to produce subscription products with high value, then that's where you should target. But also within those organizations, actually, who are the companies, the people, and the functions that have the greatest spend? One example there is, within market intelligence, we sell to a lot of market intelligence people at food companies, at agricultural companies. Actually, they're now working a lot more closely with people in data science and bringing people in with those skills. And so if you're able to appeal to both those groups, then you're going to have a stronger proposition. The third thing is to actually look and talk to your customers about what are their highest value activities and how can you break it down and work out where the greatest value in their value creation process is. Moreover, most companies will have some strategic imperatives or other key KPIs that they really have to meet in order to grow their business. The fourth thing that I recommend doing is then looking at how are these companies currently maximising these opportunities? Indeed, are they aware of the opportunities and are they maximising them? And so you can often see as a sort of third party looking in on their business, looking on their process, whether there's missed opportunity or even inefficiency. As an example, we talked to one animal health company where we estimated that the data gathering and data science setup that they had created probably cost them a couple of $1 million. Now, they had come to us and talked to us about actually, would you be able to more efficiently do that for us if you're the experts in data science, and so on. So turning to look at some examples. When I talk about low and growth markets, many of you will be aware of the food supply chain, but the way that we approached it was to break that down into the different elements of the supply chain, including trading, processing, retail, but including new areas that were up and coming, like agri-tech, and also looking at areas that aren't naturally within the supply chain but might have customers. For example, financial services, professional services. And then, of course, in every sector that you serve, there are going to be growth trends. And I've tried to pick out a few here that are very clear if you're not familiar with the sectors that I cover around sustainability and ESG or supply chain security. No one will be surprised to hear the retailers still struggling with how to get products on shelves at the right cost after the COVID pandemic. In terms of high potential customers, as I mentioned earlier, it might be that you're already very aware of these or aware of where there are emergent ones. But of course, it's always important to focus in on your priority customers because ultimately that will lead you to the greatest value. Within the high potential customers as well, be sure to work out where you want to focus in terms of you may have products that also already serve market intelligence and R&D well, but developing into those that I mentioned earlier, for example, data science or marketing or sales can be an area for growth. Coming to the high value activities that I mentioned earlier, one example there is within retail, ensuring that goods get onto the shelves became a real key priority for retailers. And so working with those types of organisations to ensure that you can help them save $1 a tonne on the products that they buy, or moving to help them understand what the next disruption to the supply chain can be, is an example of how we've moved up the value chain to be more aligned with the customer and more understand their activities and make our subscription products support what their business does. Another thing that I look for when developing out products is what is their current internal approach? And I've just mentioned the Animal Health Organisation that was essentially trying to do market sizing forecasts by itself. Now, they're a company that should be supplying products that help animals stay healthy and improve their welfare. They're not necessarily specialists in data or in subscription or information, and so you should be able to do that better for them. Coming to the how do you actually get some of those ideas to develop out, you're probably serving an industry right now, and you've probably got quite a few ideas bubbling away. But in my view, the core way that you have to approach this question is by uncovering market problems that are target your highest potential clients and question them about these to find the ways that they are currently struggling or what they would currently like to improve. Now, some people might start that with quantitative surveys or start it with the customer feedback that they're already getting. But in my perspective, these are actually supporting elements, and you should actually start with going out and talking to your customers and having interviews with them. And this is the point at which you're asking questions. You're trying to put yourself in a position of willful ignorance. Tell yourself that actually I really do know nothing about this. Take yourself out of your organisation and try and place yourself in their shoes. Asking some of your clients or prospective clients, what are your objectives? What are your key results? What will great look like after 3 months or after a year? And also sort of trying to dig into some more questions for the individuals there. What is their boss asking them to do? What will their boss fire them for? What keeps them awake at night? These sorts of questions actually will start surfacing, problems that in their business that they may not know about, and certainly you don't know about. And going back to the Pragmatic Institute, which is a really strong organisation that has a framework for product management, there are 3 elements that you should look for. One is the market problem is urgent. This needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved by a number of people within the organisation. It's pervasive, so that could be within the organisation, actually a number of people are trying to solve this problem, or it could be that actually across your top tier customers, everybody is struggling with the same problem, and therefore you can build a scalable solution. And most importantly, but often hardest to uncover, is the willingness to pay. Are people actually going to put up money, or are they already putting up money and willing to shift it to you to solve this problem? And so here again, falling back on the Pragmatic Institute work, the ideal here is to get a process that will bring together great insight, collaboration and trust with your customers. And that can look like regular meetings with them. If you want to call it a customer panel, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but essentially trying to get them together and get deeper and understanding their business. And this should both continue the earlier search that you've been doing around finding the value within your customers, finding their market problems, but also as you build this, you can start testing some of the early ideas and even the minimum viable products that you want with these customers. Likewise, you can start using that quantitative survey and checking against the current customer feedback that actually, as much as this is targeting your biggest customers, well, actually there's going to be demand for this in smaller customers. An example of this and how it came about in my business, we had a crop science company that we were talking to. We were at phase 1 of a new product. It was a database that gathered together lots and lots of information around the biological sector, which is a sustainable alternative to chemical-based agrochemicals. And we showed him what we were doing, and he was impressed. He liked it, and we quoted him a 5-figure sum. And he was very pleased with that and said, we'd be willing to pay that. But he said, actually, if you ticked off these 5-6 additional things that are really important to us, then we pay 10 times what you're saying. Now, I mentioned how difficult it is to get willingness to pay to come to the fore, but actually by building the trust, building the relationship, and becoming more consultative, that was one way that we moved towards strong signals that this is the right product to build out, the right data to bring together, and the right way to position it. Now, on the top here, I've got customer partnerships, and I think customer partnerships and taking your real top-tier clients and trying to work with them really, really closely is a very powerful thing, and something that I've actually seen across a number of different publishers, actually seemingly more prevalent and in recent years. And so I describe Challenger's customers as those that you actually feel like you get butterfly in your stomach when you agree to develop out the product. But they're your large target customers, they've shown the willingness to pay, you're a bit, you're sure that you can meet 60, 70% of what they're asking, but you know that they're going to stretch you. And I think the importance of that is that it drives you to look at your your business differently and look at it through their eyes. And so within our business, we're relatively traditional in the way that we do our forecasting. We use experts, human experts that really understand an agricultural commodity. And then we take that expertise and other data and we forecast it out. Well, a bank came to us and said, well, actually, what we'd really like is to be able to have algorithms that did this over a much broader set of agricultural commodities and, and start being able to do that on a higher frequency that's possible with humans. Now, that's quite an uncomfortable conversation to be had in a way because you've got something set up already. But through discussions with that client, what we worked out was they weren't asking for that instead of, they were actually asking for it as well as the human input because they wanted things at scale, but they also really needed the reasons why. So I'm quite conscious that I've talked through this and I sort of haven't said, well, here's how you do it. Here's precisely what it is for your business. And that's because you all represent very different industries, different segments. But I thought I'd pull together what I see as some of the the key characteristics of high-value client relationship. And I put them into two different areas. One is you need a high-value product to be high impact on your customer's business. And when I've been in more traditional publishing environments, I have to say sometimes that is forgotten, and we talk about things that may be interesting. We talk about things that might be, on trend or whatever, but we stop short of actually saying, does this information really have a measurable impact on a market problem that these customers have got? Then the second point is these products tend to focus on specialist functions and go really deep perhaps into a workflow, or they provide the connections across the whole organisation that mean you can then develop out an account management approach, bring in enterprise-wide licenses and build value in that way. And then finally, you should be looking for things that are delivered in the ways that maximise the value to the client. And I'm often surprised that we think actually there's just one way to deliver to clients. Well, there's not. Information can be delivered, whether it's through written content or data, whether it's that data is shown within your own website or whether it's delivered through an API data feed, whether it's delivered through a data lake or other ways. And I think certainly we've seen within our business that clients are becoming more sophisticated in how they ingest content from all different places, whether that's paid for content, third-party content. They're marrying that much more with their internal information. And if you can be in there, in that conversation, then that's what means that you can get sticky subscription products that are high impact for their business. The other thing that I think is important when trying to build out products of this type is actually it's collaborative. We've changed our organisation a lot over the years so that we have a lot more formal and informal conversations between the analysts and our highest value clients, ensuring that our experts not only publish content but actually can guide our clients in day-to-day and strategic decisions. It also, in my view, requires a different type of sales approach. That includes consultative account managers, those who are going to be familiar with the industries that your subscribers work in, and those that are going to be actually comfortable working on a longer sales cycle talking to people where they can only ask questions rather than actually selling to them. And of course, if you're going to support these larger clients well, you need proactive client success teams. Ultimately, I think when you get to knowing you're working well with one of your major clients and all of your major clients, it starts to feel like become one organisation working to a common goal to create value, some of which they will take and some of which you will take. Now, one thing that I have been looking at over the last year or so, since I came upon this congruence model, is actually when you're putting a strategy into place and you're saying, actually, we want to develop out some high-value new products, collecting up data, applying it to a new market or whatever, is actually how do you try and think through, have we got everything in place to try and deliver this and ultimately for this to be success. And this is the congruence model that was created in 1980 by the professors down there. And I've used it 2 or 3 times now just as a sense check as to am I headed the right direction here in terms of, yes, I've uncovered this value for the customer, but can I deliver it or what do I need in addition? So on the left-hand side, as you look at it, you'll see the input and the strategy. That might be where you're changing your strategy. You may have certain amount of resources in an environment that is, say, you're up against competitive environment, or you're in a growth area or currently challenged by decline. And on the right-hand side, you have the output. This is actually my KPIs. This is what I want my organisation, my team, my individual to deliver. For example here, I might want to, say, have 10 clients that are worth more than $100,000 over the next 3 years. The 4 elements in the middle should all be in alignment if you're going to deliver on that strategy. And those 4, I'm going to go into an example next, are the people. They're the critical tasks, i.e. the work that you do. They're the organisation and the formal structures that you have. And then there's the culture, which of course culture, as everybody knows, is the hardest to change and the hardest to align. So I often say that things towards the left are the ones that you should try to change first if you find you're out of alignment. And so again, I've kept this example quite high level, but if you're bringing in new high-value products, as I mentioned, a critical task might be you need to review that monthly with your key accounts, or you might need a customer panel on that. Well, if you're going to do that, you're not going to be able to do that with sales teams who are used to a very quick sales cycle, who aren't consultative. And so when you check in people that you've got that type of team, you need to then say, and I've seen this amongst a number of publishers, actually, we keep our inside sales, but we're going to need 1 or 2 or a team of consultative sales teams, or we transition up depending on what you've got. And of course, if you're going to have those sales teams functioning, then, for example, key account management process within the sales organisation is needed. And that culture, how does that fit into the culture? Well, for me, that is a culture where people are far more happy exploring new areas that they haven't been developing in previously. So hopefully you get the understanding of how that model works. I'm going to wrap up now. I'm really open to questions and delving into any more detail, but 3 takeaways from how to unlock significant value for B2B corporate subscribers. 1 is placing the highest, understanding how your highest potential clients create value at the centre of your strategy. The closer you get to the clients, the better that you will execute. The second part is to develop products and portfolio iteratively in order to frequently incorporate client input. As I mentioned earlier, we previously may have been quite uncomfortable putting out something that was a phase one of a biologicals product that was not much more than an Excel and some information that had been brought together. Well, actually, by doing that, we not only got a signal that the client was interested, but a signal to where we should go next. And then regularly checking the congruence of your organisation to ensure the value you're creating for the client is actually reaching the client. Because if your value proposition can't be articulated well by your sales team, then you're not going to be able to uplift or develop new products at a high ticket value. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there, but as I say, very open to questions. Have we got the microphone?
Hi there. Thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I was curious, obviously IHS, a very large organisation, big development budgets. For smaller publishers with a lot leaner budgets, maybe in a more sort of startup mentality, I mean, what would the big differences be in terms of how you approach this with a lot leaner budget?
Yeah, well, I think in a way there can be an advantage to being lean in that it doesn't really cost you anything other than time to go out and really have a conversation, deep conversation with your highest priority customers, and that's really for me is the starting point. The second point is in that environment, I expect you probably want to be even more iterative and develop out so the cost of failure is smaller. But it still comes back to the same principle that actually if you can find the value, if you can start getting value earlier, then you're also building the sort of the business case, if you will, to bring in more resource to that. And I would say from our perspective as well, from a large company perspective, although the overall development budget is there, there's still intense competition to actually prove that you should be the one that gets that development resource. And often we find ourselves blocked for resource because there's a higher priority project. And so sometimes it's actually about finding the value that you can provide to clients that doesn't need you to kind of involve big tech teams and the kind of the strategic tech teams. By way of example, we in the second phase of our biologicals project that I mentioned, we're not able to get some resource until the end of the year. But we were really keen to get this next phase out. And so what we did was we said, these are about 10 different requirements that we have that we want to get out, we want to get into customers, but 4 of these are blocked, right? So actually we bring those elements forward that we could incorporate and then add those in because we could, right? And then some of it has to wait till later. So I think in any environment that you're in, whether it's a big company, small company, you always have to struggle with those resource competition issues. Any further questions? No? If not, that's great. I'm around for the rest of the afternoon, so happy to connect with people later.